Why are young Europeans further right than Brits and Americans?
In most of the developed world, it's long been accepted as a truism that people start off left-wing when they're young and gradually get more right-wing as they get older.
True.
In English-speaking countries like the UK and the US, young people are actually becoming more left-wing in their youth and staying left-wing for longer. However, in much of Europe, the reverse seems to be happening. Across the EU, right-wing parties are performing...
I would instantly think that is not true. Like in Germany, I would think most young people, are liberal left. I don't have any proof right now, but that's what I would feel. I don't know how true this is for like Germany.
With young people. When we were doing research for our Finland elections explainer, which came out on Tuesday, we noticed that, according to polling, the Nationalist Finns party was the most popular party among 18 to 29-year-olds, with 26% of the vote.
Depends though, what is that party really like? Are they really nationalist? Are they like super racist? I don't know much about that party. Maybe they're just kind of like centrist right, like a CDU, and they're not that bad. But then he sells it like they're right wing. It's, you know.
Finland either. Young people seem pretty keen on right-wing parties in places like France, Italy and Sweden.
No, they are actually racist.
So in this video,
right-wing populists actually.
How young Europeans
they actually like AFD.
To the right, how this compares to countries like the US and the UK, and try our best to figure out why this.
I will guess a big cause is that we live in a time where a lot of people feel like the world is shit, and you always want to blame something, and that's what right-wing populism often does. Right-wing populism tells you it is a solution for all the problems the world has, even though they have no solutions. That's what populism is, right? And maybe that leads a lot of people there.
Let's start by looking at the places where young Europeans are moving right. As we mentioned in the intro, Finland's neighbour Sweden has shown signs of this phenomenon too. In 2022, the right-wing Sweden Democrats won 22% of voters aged 18 to 21.
1 in 5 young people.
Up from 12% in 2018.
I mean, you have to raise the question. I know that some Twitch editors might not like this, but you have to just raise the question. How much does the refugee crisis have influence on this? How much did the way Europe handled the refugee crisis and the way everything is going on with refugees on both sides have to do with this? And I think it's more than you think. And we can't shy away from this because it's offensive. We can't talk shit about immigrants. The truth is the truth, man. And maybe the failed integration of millions of immigrants, which is an issue of both sides. I think it's very uneducated to walk around, these Muslim immigrants not integrating. There's always both to the side. You have to also, as a government and society, give them opportunities to integrate. That has a big thing to say in this.
It's a similar story in Italy, where the ruling right-wing Fratelli d'Italia are remarkably popular with young people. A Techni poll from just before last year's election found that Meloni's party were the most popular party among 18 to 21-year-olds, with 23% support.
But that's only a 3-year margin. That's not even that many young people. I would like to see up to until 25, 26 years old. And also, one thing I learned in life is 18 to 21-year-olds are mega fucking stupid.
Closely followed by another
fucking asshole Ginger.
Party,
fuck you, Tommy.
Lega on 22%. In Germany, at the 2021 Saxony-Anhalt
But that's my home state. But that's a shitty home state with like 5 million people. It's not very representative.
Regional elections, the far-right AFD won a plurality of voters in every age bracket from 18 to 44.
That's one small state, though.
While the AFD performed pretty badly among young people at the federal elections. The most popular
good thing he says that.
first-time voters were actually the economically right-wing, pro-business FDP.
Economically right-wing? Be careful, man. A lot of young people vote FDP and Green. Green for save the planet, and FDP is like, we need to have a better economy.
In France, young people generally preferred Le Pen to Macron, who fared best with pensioners and over 50s. Now, it's important not to overstate this. In France, for example, while Le Pen did better than Macron, their
Green is a scam, basically.
Was still Jean-Luc
retard.
Mélenchon, a left-wing firebrand who now heads up the left-wing Noops coalition. Similarly,
left-wing
noobs.
It's like you play Counter-Strike with a bunch of blue-haired people. We're the left-wing noobs.
First-time voters
That's
in
our
Germany,
clan.
They were only a percentage point ahead of the Greens. It's also worth saying that this isn't an entirely new phenomenon. In the 2010s, many Central European right-wing parties became...
yes, motherfucker.
...remarkably popular with young people and first-time voters. Poland's Law and Justice Party was, by far and away, the most popular choice for first-time voters in 2014, garnering roughly a third of the vote. In Hungary, which has been led by Orban's right-wing Fidesz party for over a decade, polling from 2015 found that a plurality of students wanted to vote for Jobbik, a political party even further right than Fidesz.
Wow.
In Slovakia's 2016 elections, 24% of first-time voters voted for the People's Party, a far-right group that won just 8% of the vote across Slovakia as a whole. Nonetheless, this was previously mostly a Central European phenomenon, and the trend has definitely accelerated in recent years. It's also difficult to square with what's happening.
London is so beautiful. My hotel is right here. Yeah, right here. This is my hotel. Yeah, I remember. London is... I love London, man. What a beautiful city, man.
Countries like the UK,
Oh,
the US, and even Australia, where young people are getting more and more left-wing. In both the US and UK, for example, millennials are actually getting more left-wing as time goes on. Before the 2019 general election in
That's
the
actually
UK,
interesting. Why?
YouGov gave Labour a 43-point lead among voters aged 18 to 24, and a 24-point lead amongst voters aged 25 to 34, and estimated that the chance of someone voting Conservative in 2019 increased by about 9 points with every 10 years of age. Young Australians also deserted Scott Morrison's coalition party at last year's elections, and young Americans were significantly more likely to vote Democrat at last year's midterms, especially young women. In most political commentary, this phenomenon is considered relatively unsurprising. After all, Gen Z and millennials are pretty socially liberal and likely to be poorer than their parents. So why would they vote for small c conservatives with antiquated social views offering more of the same? So what's going on here? Why are young Europeans shifting right,
interesting question.
unlike their Anglo counterparts?
We can already see a lot of educated takes here in chat right now. Don't read chat, don't read chat.
No one knows for sure, but there are three possible explanations. First, Europeans are far more moralistic than their UK and American counterparts, and far more likely to view poverty as a choice. Young Europeans are actually more conservative in this respect than previous generations. OECD polling from 2018 found that 18 to 29-year-olds across Europe...
I didn't understand that.
And Europeans are far more moralistic than their UK...
Europeans have more morals than a UK citizen? I don't understand this, I have to be honest.
And American counterparts, and far more likely to view poverty as a choice.
A German is more likely to view poverty as a choice than a UK... I don't understand this at all. I have no idea what that means.
OECD polling...
If you're poor, it's your fault. But what, young UK people don't think that? Huh? Why would they think so? What?
2018 found that 18 to 29-year-olds across Europe were more likely than older generations to attribute poverty to, quote, laziness or lack of willpower. This isn't the same in the UK or the US, where the discourse around racial and social justice has made young people more, not less, favourable to wealth redistribution. Second, young Europeans are generally more anti-immigration. While young Europeans are more likely to think that immigration is a good thing than older generations, they strongly prefer EU over non-EU immigration, and are about as likely as previous generations to support, quote, additional measures to fight illegal immigration. In fact, until last year, young Europeans...
And that's a good point, and they are allowed to say that. And if we live in a world where you're not allowed to say that anymore, then it's a fucking... It's part of the discussion, man. And these people are allowed to have that opinion, and it's crystal clear, and you can't hide it, that immigration has been a big problem the last 10 years that led to a lot of issues, uprising of right-wingism and stuff. It hasn't been handled well. TUI Stiftung, TUI is almost broke, man. And it's something we need to generally talk about, man. And I think it's a bit dangerous from the left and like SJWs and stuff to completely shut that shit down. Oh, if you're anti-immigrant, you're a racist. Oh, you're a Nazi. That's just, we have to always, it's always important to stay open-minded and discuss this shit. How can immigration be done well? What can be done better? I just want to always urge, we should never ever get into a niche where everybody's a fucking Nazi who talks about this shit. You have to fucking talk about this shit openly, man. You know? Not with a racist background. Oh, fucking Muslims, man. That's not educational and logical. But you gotta talk about immigration, man. Immigration is good, but too much of it can destroy a country. That's a very polemic and very childish statement. It's a much more complex issue than such a Facebook dad statement, man. You can do better than that, Martin.
Europeans put immigration as the most important problem in the EU.
Wow. Migration and asylum is the most important problem that you, according to young people in Europe. Wow, Germany, 55% of young people. Yeah, look how many people care about immigration, man. Most of us. Am I still young? Am I part of this? I'm not part of this, right? I'm probably not even part of young people anymore. Who doesn't care? Spain is 41%.
Last year, the environment and immigration were joint top as the most important problem, with 30% of young Europeans putting each in their top 3. Again, this is a stark contrast to the US and the UK. In the US,
it's actually so interesting that it's so different.
Americans under the age of 35 were in favour of Trump's wall on the Mexican.
The problem with America, I see, is that Trump is so much more lunatic than what we have in Europe. In Europe, man, there is no guy who's like, we gotta build a grand wall and we gotta grab him by the pussy. They probably do that too, but they hide it a bit more. It's just with America, everything is... Also, you have only 2 choices, you know? But Trump was on a whole nother level, man. Like, what the fuck, man?
In the UK, young people are far more pro-immigration than their parents.
And that I will think is historical and cultural. Even Spain was very low on immigration, a big issue, because they, for hundreds of years, already had immigration. Look at America, it's a melting pot of cultures. All these cultures come together, so they're much more open to not be xenophobic, right? Same with the UK, who used to be an empire. Indians, South Africa, everything. Look, if you go to America, there's so many brown people everywhere, which is a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. And they had that for many years, so they're a bit more open and already culturally more open to immigration and stuff. But then you have France, though, where it's not working that way.
And immigration hasn't been top of their concerns since 2015. Third, it might have something to do with Europe's political systems. In part, because they're representative rather than majoritarian, Europe's political systems are now more pluralistic than the US and the UK. In other words, Europeans usually have
only have 2 parties, man,
to choose from, whereas in the US or the UK...
Like in Germany, I have like fucking 10 choices to vote for. And like 6 of them actually are like realistic.
The right-wing parties that young Europeans like usually have an anti-establishment bend. And it might just be that young people think the current system isn't working.
But wouldn't young people that are anti-establishment go left-wing and not right-wing?
So vote for...
But well, then you see the left-wingers and how fucking crazy they are, and you're like, oh fuck, I'm not touching this shit.
The most anti-establishment party out there. In Europe, that might be a new right-wing startup.
Sometimes too many options is worse than a few. That sounds really stupid when you talk about democracy, man, right?
There's not really a viable anti-establishment option. So young Brits and Americans just have to settle for Labour or the Democrats. So that's 3 possible reasons young European voters are more right-wing.
What are you still doing here, mate? Jeez. Well, if you want to see more, click these videos. Have fun. Looking good, boy.